Morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 Good Minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're studying the suffering servant passage in the book of Isaiah, and we are in chapter 50. And the servant himself is speaking to us. The Messiah himself is speaking to us. Chapter 50 began with God reminding the children of Israel why this captivity they're about to face is necessary. It's because of their faithlessness. And God keeps saying, why couldn't I find just one guy? And then one person speaks up, and it is his servant, his Messiah. And he speaks to us. And he serves as a contrast to their behavior, but also as someone we ourselves ought to follow. He has the tongue of a disciple, the ear of a disciple, and he follows God. Even when he is disgraced, he's not afraid or humiliated because God takes care of him. And so he's calling us to do the same, asking us to be his disciples the way he is God's disciple. In verse 10 and 11, he closes this part by saying, "Who among you that fears the Lord, that obeys the voice of his servant, that walks in darkness and has no light, let him trust in the name of the Lord and rely on his God." Now here, before Lord was Adonai, but here it's Yahweh. Who is it there among you that fears Yahweh, that obeys the voice of his servant, that walks in darkness and has no light? Let him trust in the name of Yahweh and rely on his God. Behold, you, all of you who kindle a fire, who encircle yourselves with firebrands, walk in the light of your fire, and among the brands you have set ablaze. This you will have from my hand, and you will lie down in torment. Okay, there is I'm not sure I understand clearly the image of fire and firebrands, but I'm sure it has something to do with idolatrous practice and burning offerings to idols. Um, and so, he's calling, and he has the right to command. He's talking about those who fear the Lord and those who obey the voice of his servant. The Messiah is claiming the right to command and the necessity for us to obey. If we are going to be obedient to Yahweh, we have to be obedient to the servant, to his servant, the suffering servant, and trust in the name of Yahweh and rely on his God. Does his God mean the Messiah's God, or God whom he shares with us? Is the Messiah himself the God's God, God's divinity that he shares with us? Um, I don't know, but it's clear here that the Messiah himself, the servant himself, is saying, "Follow me. Have the same trust in Yahweh that I have. Obey my commands as I obey the Father's command." And if you do, uh, and rely on God, then you will have light, and you will come through to the other side. But if you don't, there will be consequences. You will not be saved. This you will have from my hand. You will lie down in torment. Who will sit in judgment at the end? And who will deliver those who are faithless into eternal judgment? It's the Messiah himself. There is so much in these two verses. Everything that we read in Romans 8 about God loving us and not forsaking us, they're there in these two verses. And everything we learn in Revelation 21 about the lake that burns with fire and brimstone, that's here too, because it will continue to be here in the message of Isaiah. Isaiah 66 will end with a vision of eternal damnation, will end with the vision of hell. That's always going to be there. We have a choice to make. The Messiah had a choice to make, to follow, to be obedient to the Father, or to not. And he chose to be obedient to the Father. Well, he has the right to command us as well, because he and the Father are one. And we either follow him or we don't. And there are consequences both ways. Just two short verses, and yet so much of New Testament teaching is contained in these two verses. But let's not end before we understand clearly. If we didn't have verses 10 and 11, we would think of the servant as someone who does not have divine status. But in verses 10 and 11, we clearly understand that the servant has divine status because he commands and he condemns. He has that right, that authority, that power. And if we didn't have verses 10 and 11, that would not have been communicated to us. Okay, thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. Next time we're together, we're going to pick up in verse 51 and start talking about this larger encouragement to trust in God. And we're going to look at history and the universe and understand why we can have that faith in Him. Okay, thank you for joining me. We'll pick up there next time.